Thank you for listening to We Have Ways of Making You Talk. Sign up to our Patreon to receive bonus content, live streams, and our weekly newsletter with money off books and museum visits as well, plus early access to all live show tickets. That's patreon.com/wehaveways.
The reviews are in for McDonald's hotter, juicier burgers. Let's hear what Hamburglar has to say.
Robble, robble.
What our old friend Hamburglar said is, the patties are juicier, the bun is a thing of beauty, the cheese perfectly melted.
Robble.
My burger dreams have come true. You heard him, folks. These are McDonald's best burgers ever. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Robble. Available at most restaurants in this area. Comparison of McDonald's classic burgers to prior burgers.
Don't just ride the index, seek to outperform it with Fidelity Active ETFs. Learn more at fidelity.com/active ETFs. Before investing in any exchange-traded fund, you should consider its investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. Contact Fidelity for a prospectus, an offering circular, or if available, a summary prospectus containing this information. Read it carefully. While active ETFs offer the potential to outperform an index, these products may more significantly trail an index as compared with passive ETFs. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
This episode is brought to you by Azo. Ever felt off balance down there? Introducing Azo Vaginal Health Products. Azo Complete Feminine Balance helps restore the balance of good bacteria. And if you want protection from yeast and urinary tract issues, try Azo Dual Protection. Save 20% with the promo code PODCAST at azoproducts.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Alarm, alarm. Welcome to We Have Ways of Making You Talk. And James and I are still at, or back at, depending on how you listen to these, at the National Archive. A week on. Here, we've hung around for a week to record another one, yes. That's slightly unlikely. Although you're here, how often are you here?
Not that often, actually, to be perfectly honest. Not that often. I do little splurges, so I come up and I do kind of, a couple of days or something and absolutely power it.
And how does
photograph everything, take it all home?
How does it compare to, say, the German archive?
Oh my God, this is now the most user-friendly, easy to navigate archive there is.
Well, you couldn't be any happier but to hear that, surely.
Absolutely, and I promise you I didn't put you up to any of that. So no, thank you very much. I'm glad. It's always lovely to hear that we provide such a good service. We also do have over 350 research guides for those who are interested and are perhaps intimidated by archival research as well. So do check those out. They will help.
I mean, I've done all of mine online, and because one of the things is there is an awful lot of stuff online now. And you can pretty much follow your nose online now. And you have to join some things and pay some subscriptions and stuff. But can find your way. I tend to do it via journals to what they're quoting, or what they're referencing from. But I mean, it is potentially an intimidating thing, isn't it? Because you 11 million documents, the sheer sort of, it's a cliff face of information, isn't it? And how you pick the one that's the document that tells the story that. There's the thing historians are taught, isn't it, at universities, how to sift and weigh and balance documents against each other and, not pick the wrong one.
The only thing I'd say here, to what you could do with is a stack of A3 pieces of card. Because the most annoying thing is seeing the shadow of your iPhone on the document or your hand or whatever. Because I always like it, when I photograph it, I like it to look like a photocopy. Mm-hmm. Or sort of digitized version. So your shot is completely above it. It's not at a weird angle. It's flat. It's all that kind of stuff. You want it to look as...
There'll be an app that turns terrible photographs of documents into
apparent
photographs.
But it's a fact, you haven't got time to do all that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You haven't got time to do all that. But if you've got a piece of card, you can hold it above to shield from the light, and you get no shadow.
There's a pro tip for the listener. Now, last time we spoke about prisoners of war and their different experiences in Southeast Asia and then in Europe, including Bums of Broadway, or whatever it was called, at Starlight Lift 3. And I'm just imagining a production of Merchant of Venice in Nazi Germany. How do you play Shylock in, it just throws up.
There's a thought, isn't it?
Just throws up so many questions. Anyway, but today, and it's a different day to the last recording we did, honest, we're looking at the story of civilian internees here in the UK, because one of the things with the new exhibition is it's not just about the prisoner of war experience and the British prisoner of war experience. It's about more than that.
Absolutely, it is. So, one of the things we really wanted to do with the exhibition was tell that civilian story as well, and that story of, for want of a better word, incarceration during the Second World War, and again, alongside or indeed kind of to complement a lot of the, I suppose, the inspiration for the exhibition in some ways was some of the work that we've been doing around our records to do with prisoners of war, as well as those to do with civilian internees. We have incredible teams of volunteers who have helped to we talk about the catalogue, have helped to catalogue and essentially open up records that we previously weren't able to open up to the public. And again, that's ultimately what was the inspiration for the exhibition. And the internee side, the civilian internee side, was one part of that. And perhaps one of the, not one for kind of lesser known or untold stories in kind of that cliched way, but certainly in comparison to the prisoner of war story and the prisoner of war escape story, the internee side.
Well, and also, there's an opportunity to simply contrast as well, isn't there? The British government held a fair few prisoners itself, and as well as actual soldiers and airmen, and and there is a German Great Escape after all.
Absolutely,
here in the British Isles.
There's also the big roundup of civilians, enemy aliens as they were called. Which starts sort of from April 1940 really is a big spread, and then it really accelerates into May, June and July 1940, where there's a kind of invasion scare, and it's a sort of bang up the lot of them. That's the famous sort of misquote by Churchill. But it's pretty ruthless, at the point where Britain thinks, it's that rabbit in headlights moment in the second half of May where it looks like France is going to collapse and suddenly it's all going horribly wrong on the continent, and people are expecting kind of, German parachutists in non-uniforms dropping from the sky and all the rest of it. There is real, genuine panic. And this is the height of the fifth columnist idea. And this idea of the fifth column is that there is this, subversive, ordinary people. They look like you and I, but they're all amongst us and they're kind of working for the enemy. It's all this kind of stuff. And so how can you tell whether, a German Jewish refugee or a German au pair or a German steward or waiter in a restaurant in London is a fifth columnist and working for the Nazi regime, or whether they're just ordinary people minding their P's and Q's and actually escaping Nazi tyranny?
Italian head waiter at the Ritz, or
of
whatever.
Course.
Yeah.
So how do you know all that? And so the way to get around that, you haven't got time to process everybody. This is height of war and lots of kicking off on the continent. So you just round everybody up and chuck them in camps. But the camps then have to be created. And it's extraordinary, the experiences, because until a lot of them are sent to the Isle of Man, of course, famously. But until then, you've got to find, holding dumps for them. A lot of women were put in Holloway Prison, for example, as just internees. And then there was a terrible mill, wasn't there, up near Manchester, Salford or something like that.
So what does the archive tell us about this?
So it tells us a lot about the process, the decision-making around those things, both in mid to late 1939, the kind of what are we going to do in the event of war. And then when war breaks out, the so-called enemy aliens are assessed locally. There are tribunals essentially to assess individuals.
Which are very mixed in their results.
Absolutely. So an individual is then issued with a card which gives information about whether they're exempt from internment and the reasons. Kind of the back of the card will often have notes and provide details about why an individual might be exempt. But then, as you say, that all gets thrown up in the air in May, June 1940, and these cards become irrelevant from that point of view until then the authorities eventually in kind of the middle of 1941 are looking at releasing more and more internees, because it's felt by that point that threat is diminishing. And as I say, certainly the records in the archives will cover a lot of that decision making, but also in a similar way to those Red Cross reports that we were talking about last time, look and assess these camps. What are the conditions like? What can individuals do by way of recreation? What are they allowed to do? What aren't they allowed to do? What are the regulations ultimately? And again, it's it's done in a very similar way to those kinds of assessments that are made about conditions, and eventually, you know, and again, it's something that comes out in our records here at the National Archives, is the pressure that is put on the government to start releasing internees for a number of different reasons. There's a fairly famous example in that the Arandora Star, which was a ship carrying civilian internees, mainly Italian civilian internees, as well as others, Allied soldiers as well, was sunk, killing a large number of civilians, and that really acts as a bit of a catalyst to that pressure and those calls for releasing internees, and at the very least stopping internees from being, for want of a better word, deported to places like Canada and particularly Australia. And there are again a few examples of those kinds of voyages which are quite infamous in the bad conditions that internees are put in, as well as being sent away thousands of miles. Yeah,
and I suppose that it being the British government of the time, they're also trying not to spend any money on it, because there's a war to fight, which is why you end up with, on the Isle of Man, you know, basically you barbed wire off a peninsula and you put people in there. You don't.
It's so bizarre.
Isn't it? Yeah.
The Port Erin.
Yeah.
You know, what's it called? Russian camp. Yeah. Russian. Rushen. And it's in that kind of southern peninsula of the southern part of the Isle of Man, and they basically just put barbed wire along one from side to side. There's 2 villages, and everyone in it is part of the camp, and the civilians who are already there are just encouraged to kind of take in the prisoners. They're given £1 a week, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Quite a lot of money.
Yeah, because it's essentially a seaside resort. So there's lots of bed and breakfasts and hotels, and that's partly why it was chosen. Yeah. And as you say, those who lived in the area lived in the same houses. They live amongst the internees. They have more freedom than those internees.
The point worth making in this is that within the community is the wrong word, but within the body of the internees, there are people who are Nazis. So it's not like it's a sort of an incarceration of the innocents in totality. That there are people who it's the right thing probably given the set of circumstances to lock them away, as well as lots of Jewish people. And we were talking about this the other day about Russian, where there's the idea that you would be lodging. You know, you might be a German Jew and you're lodging with a Nazi. It's just the most extraordinary.
And how do you rub along?
How do you live cheek by jowl like that?
When you're given comparative freedoms and you're able to just go for a walk, go for a bathe.
But I suppose the big difference is the Nazi has no power in that situation. So they can have all the ideology they want, but they have no power, so they can't act on it.
No, but what they can do is they say, if you're nice to me, you know, when the Germans come, I'll put in a good word for you.
Oh, I suppose, yeah, but
there's quite a lot of that going on. I mean, there's sort of written evidence of people saying that. I mean, it's just absurd, but.
Well, and a lot of the reports for particularly Russian camp, for example, I mean, they talk about troublemakers and moving troublemakers around to kind of settle some of those, again, and they use kind of language like to settle those disputes is the kind of language that's used.
But they have their own little sort of finance system in Russian camp where they give out tokens, because some people have quite a lot of money and some people don't. And so then it's sort of unfair on the people that haven't, because you can just go around and go to the shops. Yeah. So the whole economy in Russian camp is based on tokens as well.
Yes, for a period of time, yes, absolutely it is.
Bonkers. Well, it's rather brilliant, actually.
Yeah, and because there's also a disparity as well, so just thinking about, you know, promises. So what the German authorities are doing is sending care packages to German internees, but an individual had to swear allegiance to the Reich in order to receive those packages. So you also then get a disparity within the camp of individuals who are willing to do that, obviously then against those who are not willing to do that. And some of whom are
cross fingers.
Yeah, well, and that's it. Some of them are, for want of a better phrase, apolitical. They're not Nazis necessarily, but they are willing to do that in order to.
But the other point, of course, is that you might be a Nazi, but so what? I mean, it's not going to do you any good, is it? Or I mean, you're an impotent Nazi, and so to a certain extent, that's fine.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because after all, you know, with the Geneva Convention, what does that say about civilian internees? Because after all, whenever people talk about the Geneva Convention, they immediately think it's about prisoners of war. But these people are prisoners of war. They're not in uniform. They're not ex-combatants or whatever. And so that starts to talk starts to talk to the relationship between the state and a civilian and a foreign civilian, and because after all, states have their obligations to their own civilians and their own citizens, as it were. But what in the end is where's the line drawn? And that's what this is asking questions around, isn't it? And creating argument around, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because the 1929 conventions say very little about civilians, and that's partly what the 1949 convention does, is kind of rectify that to some degree. But I think what happens early on, and again you see the back and forth between the British and German authorities in wartime, sometimes through a neutral power, so not necessarily directly, where maybe
Switzerland.
Yes, or Sweden as well, where they're kind of agreeing that civilians would be treated or be protected in similar ways to prisoners of war. So they're kind of doing or making that decision that either initially informally, and then they actually start to have those kinds of conversations which stipulate, yes, this is what we're going to do when it comes to civilians in the UK or civilians in Germany, is we will treat them in line with prisoners of war, which is why you do then get Red Cross inspections of civilian camps, both in Europe and also in the UK.
Yeah. We'll take a break and we'll look at some documents.
This episode is brought to you by Watches of Switzerland. Elevate every moment with a new watch from Watches of Switzerland. They have one of the largest selections of new and pre-owned timepieces in the US, and they carry some of the most prestigious brands like Tudor, Cartier, Omega, Tag Heuer, and more. So come discover the perfect watch for all your adventures. Browse the entire collection at watchesofswitzerland.com.
When Sweet Tarts dared to combine sweet and tart, they thought, why stop there? Why not create other exciting and unexpected combinations, like rainbows and ropes, or fruity and gummy, or chewy and more chewy? That's why they created fun treats like Sweet Tarts Twisted Rainbow Ropes, Gummies Fruity Splits, and Chewy Fusions. When you dare to combine, it's sure to blow your mind. Sweet Tarts, dare to combine. Visit sweettartscandy.com to shop now.
This episode is brought to you by Hyperice, the leader in advanced warm-up and recovery technology. They have tons of innovative products, like Venom-heated wearables to help soothe sore back muscles, Normatec compression boots to speed up recovery and increase circulation, and Hypervolt massage guns to improve mobility. Loved by athletes like Naomi Osaka and Erling Haaland. Try them yourself. Get 10% off your order with the code MOVE at hyperice.com.
Welcome back to We Have Ways of Making You Talk here at the National Archive, TNA. I'm down with the lingo now. It was the PRO to me for a very long time.
But you've moved on at last.
I'm finally getting with the programme, Daddy-O. And we're looking at some documents now about what we were just talking about. And Jim is thumbing right this second the Aliens Restriction Act of 1922. So they were thinking about this couple of decades beforehand. Well, that's quite interesting in itself, that there's a piece of law.
Yeah, but look where this comes. So this is the Aliens Restriction Order of 1940, based on the Aliens Restriction Act of 1922. The Government Office, Isle of Man, 12th of June 1940. Aliens shall not have in their possession or under their control or use any motor vehicle or bicycle, any camera or other photographic apparatus, any telescope, field glasses or other optical instrument, any nautical chart or any seagoing craft or aircraft. Well, that's pretty obvious, isn't it?
The Isle of Man, is this Isle of Man law or British government law? Because the Isle of Man is a sort of half in, half out, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's British government law, and essentially the British government approaches and asks the Isle of Man to do this in that way. So,
His Excellency Vice Admiral the Right Honourable the Earl Granville, CB DSO, Lieutenant Governor of the said Isle, etc., etc., etc.
What's interesting is, and obviously this is sort of the point, it doesn't say who the aliens are. There's an understanding of who they are. We all know who that means.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And what a lot of these orders, and this particular document is a number of different kind of covering a number of different areas. So that first one you read out there, James, was obviously focused on perhaps items that might be transport and items that might be deemed as
spying
used
kit.
for spying. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's also other things. So around the use of telegrams, about sending and receiving letters, that's incredibly limited. And then there are later ones around banking. So individuals had to deposit valuables and money into the camp bank, if you like, and could only withdraw a certain amount every week.
You could write letters, though, if they were censored, couldn't you?
Yeah, yes, but you were limited to a certain number a week. So you could. They were censored. You could both send and receive letters, but they were limited, and I think the size was also limited. It was up to 4 sides.
Right. You've just pointed out, Al, they've got the classification. Point 6. An enemy alien shall mean a national of any state with which His Majesty is at war, and shall include a stateless alien.
So that's Germany. Russian internment camp rules amended 9th of September 1940. Household control. The householder is under the commandant, the responsible authority for the internal control of each household, and may appoint a representative for the internees if he or she so desire, elected by other internees to assist in the arrangement of duties. Lights out. Internees must be in their own rooms with lights out at 10 p.m. and silence thereafter. I mean, it's like boarding school.
Nice little details I can weave back in at the proof.
You can't
proof
smoke
stage.
in your bedroom, Jim.
No.
No meetings in bedrooms.
I know, I'm just sort of thinking, I mean, this is 9th of September, so this is after my period that I've been writing about, but, you know, when it comes to the copy edit, I can still...
It's good stuff.
Weave a little bit, can't you?
You're not allowed food in your bedroom. You're not allowed You're not allowed to lock your bedroom. No open flame lamps, stoves.
Not allowed to throw anything out windows.
No, you're not allowed to hang pictures. I mean, this is like a rental agreement from the mid-90s.
Yes, and it'll cost you £18 a week.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. To visit bars and to attend dances in public halls or cafes, or to purchase any alcoholic drink. I mean, that's Joanna M. Cruikshank.
Yes, she was the commandant, of Russian.
And certainly, so we've got a couple of the reports from the camp, which are put together both after the war, but also as part of visits to the camp. And one of the things that is commented on is the curfew, and particularly during the winter, how individuals had to be back inside the premises in which they were living by, I think, 5:30 in the evening. But again, because it gets dark early, it's seen as a security risk to have individuals out later. I think in the summer it's 9 p.m. is the latest that individuals could be.
So we're looking at the report on the visit to the women's internment camp on the Isle of Man. Housing and general conditions. Practically, the whole of the 2 small watering places of Port Erin and Port St Mary form one large camp under one commandant, which is accommodated between 4,000 and 5,000 internees. I mean, that's quite a lot, really. There are gates with barbed wire at either end of the camp, and wire runs behind the houses at a certain distance from the coast. But within this area, the internees are free to walk them out as they please. Absolutely
So it
amazing.
says the permanent residents are, for the most part, proprietors of hotels and boarding houses who formerly relied on their living on summer visitors. Now all the available accommodation is used for the internees, the Home Office paying the householders a flat rate of £1, 1 shilling and no pence per week.
There's a guinea, of course.
For each adult, and 10 and 6 for each child. The management and catering remain in the hands of the householders. Blah, blah, blah. Undoubtedly, there's friction between the internees and the householders, and complaints as to food, heating, light. This is how they're all chiming along. It seems to me that many difficulties and anomalies would have been avoided if from the start the Home Office had taken over all the houses and installed the proprietors as managers at a fixed salary. Gosh, because they basically because it's devolved and private, they haven't got control over it.
Yes, absolutely.
That is what's going on there, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That's very interesting.
And then over here, what we have is a similar kind of report.
Let's go clockwise.
So this report was written towards the end of the war, and we've got a lot of this kind of document for lots of different subject areas. So this is kind of a lessons learnt document around internment, and particularly around internment in Russian camp. There's lots of photographs that come with it, but it's essentially its purpose is in case the authorities have to do it again. Right. And you get a lot of these documents from a prisoner of war point of view. There are a lot of these kind of lessons learned documents produced at the end of the First World War, which inform exactly how policy is carried out during the Second World War. But this is a similar kind of report. And there's lots of photographs in here that looks at some of particularly the recreational activities, the education that's going on, because it's both a woman and a children's camp as well. Children could accompany their mothers.
It doesn't look too bad, does it?
Picture of the kindergarten.
Again, though, these are propaganda images.
Yes.
Just
Well, I
thinking
know,
about
I get that, but even so...
They just haven't got a production of Bums on Broadway. Otherwise, I mean...
Well, maybe they did.
There were operas that were staged in the camp, which are detailed.
I mean,
the
thing is, yes, it doesn't look that bad, Jim, but these people are not at their liberty. So
no, I know, I appreciate that.
I know, but this is the thing. I think this is the thing that's very often beguiling about these sort of images is you can in your head say to yourself, oh well, it's not that bad, is it? But you know, they're not allowed out, and I mean, in a way, it looks like The Village in The Prisoner a bit. You know, they're all. What could they possibly have to complain about?
I'll tell you what, though, there's a TV drama to be done on Russian camp, isn't there?
There is, yeah, or a sitcom.
Oh,
You know,
now you're
it's
talking.
quite funny, I think. There's the
Well, you have a comic
show.
Nazi.
Well, no, it's just that because there's that amazing story in Berlin about those two lesbians who hide in they hide in Berlin in plain sight. They go to the landlady and say, "We're on a secret mission from the Führer." There's two they're avowed Nazis. The landladies and avowed Nazis say, "We're on a secret mission for you. You must absolutely not tell anyone that we're staying here." So, and that's a sitcom, surely, in one way or another.
Well, this is a sitcom, isn't it?
But I think it's really it is interesting though, because this is dealing with what appears to be a problem, but they phase it out, as you say. It comes to the point where this isn't practicable anymore, and really, it isn't, is it? I mean, you look at it; these are, especially if these are people who are opposed to the German government, then they're a resource, aren't they? If you need to translate things, or even, I mean, you think of all the men that go into the Pioneer Corps and then are allowed into proper regiments eventually, all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely, and in fact, we then have an example of exactly that kind of process. We have so this is an individual file of someone who naturalised after the war, but was initially interned. And freed in September 1941. And she was in Russian camp, Port Erin, and she was essentially a parliamentary agent for the Labour Party before the war, so she was able to exert some pressure politically for the release of civilian internees, including herself, within that, and eventually was deemed not a threat,
sort of safe
from that point of view. And again, there is a version of her tribunal card in this paperwork, in this file that we have here, which talks about her being an anti-Nazi and not being a threat.
It doesn't say what she gets classified as. Class C.
So initially she's Class C, and then she's released as Class C. So yeah, September 1939. I mean,
it's ridiculous putting Class C people in.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, as you say, it's a gradual process, but she's released in September 41.
I mean, is there any, because prisoners of war, there are some repatriations. People who are ill and stuff can be repatriated. And is there a process in place for civilians to be repatriated? Is there a sort of swapping thing going on?
Yes, absolutely. And it is swapping in that way. It's kind of like for like.
I mean, this is really interesting. So Theresia Tekla Maria Kuck. Findings of committee and remarks. This woman is a German-born and nationality, having been born on the 24th of June 1903 at Oldenburg. She is Aryan and a single woman.
So not a Jew, is what that means.
Yes. She tells us that she left Germany first to go into domestic service in Holland in 1922. She returned to Germany in 1924 and went to a convent where she learned hospital nursing for a period of 18 months. From thence, she spent a certain time in a maternity home learning maternity work and returned to Holland to be employed in the same family as employed before in 1926. She remained there, blah, 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 till 1931 when she went to England. She is a woman of intelligence who has satisfied us that she is anti-Nazi and wholeheartedly in favour of the British war effort. She met in 1935 a Mr. Shaler, a married man with whom she fell in love, and they began to live with each other in 1936. We do not think there's any foundation for the suspicions which were expressed as to the activities of this woman in the police report of the 27th of July 1940, and we think that if she were released from internment, that she would present no danger to the security of this country. Accordingly, we recommend that she be placed in Class C.
MI5 observations attached, no camp report. So MI5 have had a good look at her as well. I mean, What a waste of time. It's a time and effort, but
her story is a positive one. She naturalised as a British citizen after the war, and so she
ever after.
to some extent with Mr. Shelley. They never married, but she took his surname. We know that from her files.
If she'd married him, would she have been in a different situation before the war?
Potentially, because normally at that period, women took the nationality of their husbands.
Because my grandmother came from Vienna with my grandfather in 37 to 36, and must have been, because none of this happened to her. So yeah, potentially why she was from Salzburg.
Yeah,
Vienna.
I mean, in my book that she gets classified B because she's still got relations in Germany who are who are in the party, but because she hasn't taken nationality.
Listen to this. I mean, these documents. This is just brilliant. So this is particulars of internee. So it's all her present nationality of birth German, present nationality USA.
So that I think is of her father.
Oh right, okay. Yes. Oh, yes, that's her father. Yes. So, but look at this. When did you leave your country? April 1952. Why did you leave? Depreciation of the mark. Anyone who's done GCSE history,
yes, will know
exactly. Well, of course, that's why she left then.
Wow, isn't it amazing all this?
It is, and like I say, so her file, this file, which obviously we have here in the National Archives collection, is one of a large number of these kinds of files that we have, as well as the tribunal cards, as I've said, and then you mentioned the Pioneer Corps, for example, and individuals who went on to serve in the armed forces. A number of them in SOE. We have SOE service records as well. Of course. Large numbers of individuals who were initially interned in 1940, who then went on to have quite illustrious careers in the armed
It's just fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. That folder alone. Yeah. And there's one of those for everybody. It's
not every single person,
but everyone who came out the other end of the process.
Are many
I need to quickly get my camera out and stop snapping a few things here.
And this is very new. It was only opened a couple of months ago.
A friend of mine's writing a play about Russian camp.
Is he?
Yeah.
He needs to get himself up here, doesn't he? Very good.
I'll tell her. Yeah, but yes, you've made an assumption there, Jim, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, because her mum was interned.
Apologies to your friend.
That's all right. Her mum was interned. They came in 38. They fled after Kristallnacht and managed to get into the UK, or her mother did, and then they were interned. So she's writing a play about it. It's amazing. This is just brilliant. So
yeah, it's been fascinating, isn't it?
And one of the reasons we're here, because we have been meaning to come here forever. Yes. And we've got here, but also this is all related to the new exhibition, Great Escapes.
2nd of
February.
2024.
So save up during January. It's free, so you don't need to save up. So save up for the Uber.
And when you're here, get your reader's ticket. And
get your reader's ticket.
Reader's card.
And go truffle hunting, basically.
Yeah, we will have some dedicated research terminals for people who do want to then carry out some research once they've been to the exhibition, or before they've been to the exhibition, or indeed at any time.
At any time, because that's
honestly, I'm not just saying this because I'm here and you're standing in front of me, but it is an absolutely fantastic archive. It's a total treasure trove. All the staff here are incredibly helpful, and it is very easy to use, and it's a great place. Lovely cafe as well, and facilities and stuff.
Well, the cafe was very busy. It seemed like a place to come if you're local.
There's quite a tricky combination thing on the lockers where you put your bag.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But I set mine to 1939, so I'll never forget it, and it's fine.
Brilliant. So basically, next time you're here, everybody, try every locker. And one will open with 1939, and that's James Holland's stuff.
Still here because I can't get it out.
You can't get it out. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks very much, Will, for taking us through this stuff and talking about this area of the Second World War. We'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.